Welcome to the Win Win Evangelism Podcast. My name's Dr. Tina Waldrom. In a nation where fewer people are exposed to the message of Jesus, it's more important than ever for churches and believers to be equipped to share their faith in genuine and culturally relevant ways. I'm the Director of Evangelism in Australia, and for the past 30 plus years, I've been training and equipping churches and believers to share their faith in relevant ways. Each week, this podcast will help you do exactly that. Enjoy the weekly interviews and teachings, and be sure to check out the questions in the show notes. These questions are designed so that you can use them in your church small group or simply by yourself. We're here to win, win, win. A fascinating discussion today, something that I'm praying is very helpful for you and your church. How to run a gospel event. I'm talking to Nicola Gibb, who is an ordained evangelist and itinerant minister in the C3 Church movement, and now pastoring C3 Church Penrith. Welcome to you, Nicola.
Thanks, Tina. So great to be here with you.
It's great to have you along, and as we talk about this how to run a gospel event, you're about to run a third tent event, which is highly unusual in the Australian landscape, but you are seeing incredible effect. And out of running these events, there's some principles that are transferable for church leaders that are wanting to run a gospel event from their church, either from that building or outside of that building. And I'd like to talk to you about that. But first of all, we did have you on the show a while ago, and I'll drop the links in the show notes so that people can go back and listen to the first interviews that we've done. But what inspired you to run another gospel tent meeting?
Well, it's a great question. Well, when I first took over being pastor, I was a travelling evangelist, and then I took over a church that was really struggling, Tina. It was, almost about to close the doors. It needed some fresh life. And it was just seriously the Holy Spirit. He said, put up a tent. And I, being obedient, I thought to myself, you want me to put up a tent? I've never put up a tent. How do I do that, God? And I was in cahoots with evangelist Tim Hall at the time. And so my question to God was, do you want me to learn off Tim, or do you want me to just crack into it myself? And so actually Tim called me, perfect timing, and I thought I had my answer then and there, and he had Penrith on his heart to come to put up a tent. The very same time I was wanting to invite him into Penrith. So it was like a win-win evangelism moment. And so Tim came along, and he became my mentor to how to do this tent. I've done 2 tents with Tim now, and I did all the groundwork for him and just served him. And then after 2 tents, the Lord said, right, now it's your turn.
Right, so here we are about to have another event soon in Penrith, which you can follow or be a part of at the website, thepenrithtent.com.au, which is just incredible. Now, first of all, I want to talk about a challenge that you had was raising the finances to actually get this event off the ground coming up in Penrith. How did you raise the extraordinary amounts of money?
Yeah, so that was incredible. The 2 tents that I did with Tim, he was underwriting the event himself. And so me giving this a crack myself, stepping out of faith, I said, God, how? And I felt that he said, put on an art exhibition. I'm a bit of an artist in the background, and I'd used like my art as an income stream when I was a traveling evangelist. I would do small little artworks and take them with me traveling and earn extra money that way. And so I was like, oh my goodness, like really? Like we had to raise something like $45,000-$50,000 to put up this tent. So it was a bit of a challenge for me to believe that I could sell that much art to raise money for the tent. But interestingly enough, my little art business was called Art with Heart, and the Lord said, I want you to change it to Art for Hearts. And your art has now turned to seed. And I was like, wow, God, okay, so you know how that scripture says he will supply the sower with seed? And so I saw God's vision for supplying the funds for the tent was going to be through this art exhibition. I was in the gym one day. I'm a personal trainer, a bit of a side hustle I do as well. And I was at this new gym that I'd started working at, and I'd been working there probably a good 6 to 8 months, and I was literally sharing the stories with all these people about the tents and, you know, the crusade and all this stuff and the church and sharing all this stuff. Little did I know I was sharing the vision with them. When I said these words out loud, I'm looking for a place to have an art exhibition. One of the guys who was on the senior leadership team of this church that the gym belongs to, because I work at a gym that's a non-for-profit gym. It's a ministry of the church. Isn't that great?
Mm.
So I'm working in this non-for-profit Christian-focused gym, sharing about the tent and how I'm looking for a place for an art exhibition. He said, why don't you have it here? And I said, what where? And he said, there's a basement inside of our church, up, like it's all on the same grounds. It's all ready for an art exhibition because the last pastor was an artist. And I said, really? I said, I know that basement. And all of a sudden I had this like mind-blowing moment, because backstory, 20 years ago, when I was a broken, very broken single mum with 2 little babies, to think, how am I going to support myself? How am I going to raise these children on my own? I ended up in this basement at this church, and it was called Flamingos because flamingos stand on one leg. And so they had this beautiful ministry for single mums, and I ended up there so broken, Tina. And I remember those beautiful days of just, you know, God trying to restore me back into church after I had backslidden and disobeyed God. And it was beautiful times. And I met this woman, and she got this heart for me, and she was just like a mum. And she heard my story of escaping domestic violence and all this stuff. And she said, would you come and share your story at our women's event? And I was just chuffed at that, because, you know, I felt called to be a preacher ever since I got saved. And I thought I'd blown the call of God so badly with, you know, my marriage breakup and everything. So I was chuffed with that. And then I was sharing with her how I had just started painting. I'd done about maybe one artwork before she, you know, I was telling her that it was helping me heal. And she said, oh, why don't you do us a painting and we'll auction it off at the women's conference after you speak? And I was like, oh, no, you don't want me to do that. I'm not very good, really. And she said, no, I want you to do it. And she was adamant, Tina. Anyway, it's such an amazing painting now I look back, because anyway, I did this painting. I got really ambitious. It's like 6 foot long and about 60 centimeters wide. And I did this painting of a mountain, a beautiful sunset, a big mountain, and a man on top of the mountain in victory, in a stance of victory and praising God. And I was at the bottom of that valley when I painted that. I was at my worst. Anyway, I took the painting along. I spoke, did my testimony, took the painting along, and I remember she gave me a check for $50 and a coffee mug. And I thought I'd hit the high times, like this was the first speaking gig, you know, like, oh, I just got paid to share my testimony. And I thought I'd made it, you know, as a full-blown itinerant minister. And then she ended up buying the painting because nobody else wanted to buy it. She ended up buying the painting herself. And that was the last I saw of that woman. That would have been 20 years ago now. So when this man in the gym suggested that I have the art exhibition in the basement of this church where I was in that Flamingos ministry, I went up to the church one afternoon to see if I could have a look at the space. And there was nobody at the church. It was all dark. And I was looking through the windows to see if somebody could show me where I could have this art exhibition to raise all the money for this tent. And I go up to the front doors of the church and I'm peering through the windows. I look into the foyer. It's quite a big church. The double doors to the auditorium were locked. And I looked up above the doors in the silence of the afternoon, and there is the painting that this woman had bought off me 20 years ago. And I couldn't believe it, Tina. I looked up and I thought, is that my painting? And there's the man on the mountain, and it's in the most prized position in the whole church. And right then and there was the confirmation from God that I needed. In my Noah, I knew that God was with me. And it was just like Jesus went, surprise, I'm here. This cement-like substance of faith went into my spirit, and I was like, wait, God, you are in this. You are in the exhibition, and if you are in the exhibition, then you're in the tent as well. That means this event is going to be a success, and that was the faith I needed to go ahead and, I started painting like crazy. It took me like 4 months of solid work to try and pull this exhibition together.
Just incredible. And it's just so exciting because as I hear your story, I'm like, for anybody to put on a gospel event, there's got to be a level of faith, and there's got to be a understanding that God is going to provide, and you really have to lean into the provision that God's going to provide. You got to have faith for the event, which is exactly what you've done.
Let me ask you a question. Are you equipped to share your faith? Is your church ready to do the same? Our evangelism training helps both individual believers and church leaders foster a culture of evangelism. It equips everyday Christians to have natural faith conversations and provides pastors with the tools to train their church. With flexible online resources, you can learn at your own pace, anytime, anywhere. Don't leave evangelism to chance. Visit evangelisminaustralia.com to get started.
Gospel events are amazing. I mean, the tent that you're doing is just extraordinary. And again, for people, the penrithtent.com.au. Nicola, what about the ongoing fruit? That's one of the questions that people ask. Oh, if we run a gospel event, are we going to see much? We're going to see people stay following Jesus. What's happened with your events? What have you noticed?
Well, like approaching the event, I wanted to be super solid on a discipleship process, letting other pastors know that we had a discipleship process, and not like lots. We were just sold out. We're sold out on alpha. I'm an alphaholic. I literally love alpha. I know if you do an alpha course, you are going to stay in church. It is a solid, I just love it. Anyway, so we chose alpha. And we put the alpha groups on straight after the tent event so that everybody gets saved. We're like, try and get people in alpha. So we literally have in our church, and we were just a small church doing this event, right? So we still have two people who got saved in the tent, fully serving Jesus in our church still. Like 18 months ago, we did that tent, that they're still in church. And they have become the biggest evangelists in our church. So, it's really great fruit.
Yeah, it is. It is great fruit, and it's so exciting to see that. And I think that is very important if you're going to put on a gospel event. Like I worked with Alpha, so I'm an alphaholic as well. I ran Alpha at our church, and then I worked with Alpha and just so enjoyed my time with Melinda and the team at that time. It's important to have some type of a discipleship process thought through so that you can, I guess, what's undergirding it, Nicola, is you're trying to pull people into community so that they're connecting with other Christians. Is that one of the powerful things that you're looking for? Like, how do you get people into community after making decisions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like we're looking at making strong connections at the tent, first of all. having our team so focused on visitors. And, that is our priority, is anybody who doesn't know Jesus, we're trying to connect the tent. We want them to come back. It's a 5-night event. So we want them to come back to the whole event. And through that process, we're building connections and confidence in them to come back. But yeah, we're going to ring everybody after the event and talk to them about Alpha or visiting church or even coming to a connect group or something to reconnect with them. And, you're not going to get 100%, buyback, but you're going to get some people that stick. And it's that God does that work in the heart. So you just go after the ones that are going to plant and stick with you, and you're going to get a lot of fruit out of those ones.
Yes, absolutely. And how do you go, like, as the senior pastor of your church, you're trying to put on another tent event, and also what I'm trying to learn from you today is how could I put on a gospel event if I was a church leader? How did you sell that vision to the church, and how do you get them invested in that?
Yes, so I started speaking early vision-wise to the church, and that we should literally invest in a local mission. And the tent represented to us a local mission. There's a lot of missions, overseas you can support. And I started talking to them about let's infect Penrith first. Let's make this our mission moving forward. And so our focus and prayers and everything go into our local area. And everybody seemed to really grasp that and love that. And so that's why, we call it our local mission. A lot of churches don't even have a local mission fund, or they don't put money into their local state, do everything overseas, but forget to like what's happening right here, right now. So I started selling the vision like that, if you like, or proclaiming the vision. And a lot of our church came to the tent and loved it. The other thing I did, Tina, was after the first exhibition, the Lord gave me a strategy to put on a second exhibition, but in a different location in our church, actually. And I asked 5 other artists in our church to get involved. I said to them, would you like to use your art as seed as well? And would you like to invest in God's kingdom this way? And they were so excited. So what it did to the 5 other artists in our church was it mobilized them. And it was the best thing ever. Like, you should have seen one of the artists' faces when she sold her first piece of work. She was so delighted that she sold a piece and that money was going into evangelism in her local area.
Yeah, it really gave you that opportunity to equip others to really be a part of it as well, which is a great concept to think through of how you could do that for other people if you were raising finances for your own gospel event. Tell me about the Go training, because I know that you have this amazing training that people can access through the penrithtent.com.au, or you can also visit Nicola's website, which is nicolagib.com.au, Gibb with a double B. Tell us about your Go training, because it is pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you. Well, Go training was developed quite some years ago when I travelled to different churches. I'd equip and mobilise churches in evangelism. It's just a 4-week course on Zoom. The Lord said, to give it away for free. It's free evangelism training. It's really to focus on making evangelism easy. And I go through all these different E words to equip people. There's another E word on just making it easy, because I think one of the mindsets in Christians is that evangelism is hard. And it's so easy to connect the gospel into just everyday, normal language conversations, and to not make it, not get complicated, but build confidence, shape, sharpen, and share your testimony so that, like a lot of Christians as well want to tell people the whole story instead of just focusing on what part of your testimony is going to serve the person sitting in front of you at the time. So we learn tools like that. It's equipping people, building confidence. And then I'm hoping that some people that come online and do our Go training can actually put the theory into practice and come and volunteer at the tent if they're local.
Yeah, amazing. And you may be listening to this and thinking, I'd love to do that training, and I'd encourage you to do that. But why not consider driving up to Penrith, flying into Penrith? Maybe you're a senior pastor and you want to see something like this in action. I believe actually evangelist Tim Hall is going to be there on the last night, which is pretty exciting as well. But why don't you go and check it all out? That would really help you, the penrithtent.com.au. How's the local council about it all?
Well, praise God, we don't have to deal with the council this time because we have been given private land to put our tent up on. So no council to deal with this tent around. If you listen to the other podcast, you'll see that we had a few issues with that. But this time round, we got blessed with private land. The guy who got us through the council last time, because he knew somebody, he actually owns the land and said, you know what? You can have my land. So that's awesome. But, look, I just wanted to say something, Tina, to pastors, because I reckon one of the biggest things that came out of the first tent, the second tent, and it will out of the third tent, it changed the landscape of our church. It literally changed, it attracted people to our church who were hungry to do something for God. They're hungry for the harvest. They want to get involved. They don't want to come and sit in church and do nothing. They're excited about being a part of something that's bigger than just coming to Sunday service. They want to get out into the harvest, and they want to challenge themselves on an evangelism team and talk to people on the street and hand out some invites. And there's all these different ways to mobilize the church. Like I said, the artists got mobilized. The praise and worship team, people are joining the praise and worship team that never would have before. And the volunteers to serve, and there's so many ways that they can serve at the tent, that everybody feels like they're just part of this great event and we're outside of the walls of the church. The reason I love the tent so much is that it's an easy access. It's like a low threshold. For people to walk into the tent is a lot easier than asking people to walk into church. And sometimes that word church can have, those negative connotations. But if you say, come to the tent, see you at the tent, and you make a big deal about it, the tent's like a real novelty. And that can be a tent or it can be a different event at your church, but just to make it like a novelty that people are interested in and it's something they want to come and check out.
Yeah. It's so exciting and just so many great principles as you're talking. I'm thinking, yep, those are all applicable to however we want to run a gospel event. So, we're just praying for this event and really believing that it will be wonderful. It will be wonderful. I mean, there's so much evidence of God at work, putting it all together, raising the money, etc., etc. So very excited and so blessed to have you on the show again. So I want to encourage you as a listener to go back and watch the other episodes, which we'll have in the show notes. We'll link back to the times where Nicola Gibb has been on the podcast. Also, you can again go to the penrithtent.com.au and you may want to get involved. You may want to look at that as a bit of a shadow type for something that you could do for a gospel event, or you may feel God calling you to get involved, go and do the training, drive up there, fly in, whatever it is. So Nicola, thank you so much for being on the show again and leading another female evangelist. I've got to say I'm very excited and it's always wonderful to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Tina. It's just an absolute pleasure. God bless everybody.
We're here to win, win, win.
Well, thanks for listening today. I truly pray this has been helpful for you and your church. Don't forget to check out the show notes where you can get some questions that can be worked through as an individual or as a small group, hoping this can really serve you well. For all other training, please go to evangelisminaustralia.com.